Hello, guys. Welcome back to a live segment on Carnivore Muscle Ramblings. This is episode number 32 now with myself, the competition consultant, and Jerome Armstrong, the high intensity training and fitness enthusiast and extraordinaire. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for the kind words.
Yeah, I could have been less pleasant, but anyway, let's see what's going on.
Camera.
Oh, yeah. You bastard.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how often I get that.
Yeah, so I've got Jerome's video airing tomorrow, which is very exciting, guys. I highly recommend you check that out. Put your notification bell icon on and do watch that. It is a very good video. So if you wanted to know a bit more about Jerome, a little bit about his history and things like that, it's definitely worth watching. There's some things I actually didn't know in there myself, so it's cool stuff. You might as well just hit like actually now. Yeah, go to it now and hit like. I think it's a very good idea. Yeah. All right. Let's go for the chat. See what's going on. It's always stuff about your truck, isn't it, Rick? Yeah. How's it going for you, Rick? You doing good?
Were you able to finish building that trench the other day? I'd be curious about that.
I was thinking the same. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it depends what they consider graphic. What I do know about YouTube is they don't like monetizing dangerous things or harmful things. But is it harmful to someone? Not really. So if you burn yourself doing it, then maybe not. But yeah, there probably is some kind of censorship. But they're not really worried about smaller YouTube channels. It's mainly like huge million following channels they're going to be like looking at carefully. So I wouldn't worry too much. Just do you and share your experiences and cooking and things like that. Hit the like button. You get it?
I like that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Excellent. Sophie's here. She can't join on camera today. She's got stuff to do. Yes, she's very busy. Very busy. She's got errands to run before I make my way over there on Monday. So. Much obliged, thank you. Hello, Ramblance. Is that a word?
I'm not sure, but I always like when people come in with. I like when people come in with creative titles for us and everyone else in the chat. I'm assuming that rambling is kind of a portmanteau of someone who rambles plus a miscreant. So I think you're in good company.
I was thinking that as well. Oh yeah, the quackers. Yeah, and G Kyle, have a good one. Yeah, I received your notification on Facebook to join the group, the Carnivore Crew group. The prerequisite of joining the group is payment to the group. I sent you the link anyway. Hopefully you'll join up sometime soon, so it'll be cool. It's still only, I think, £10 per month for the next 2 months approximately, so it's a great deal. Yeah, yes, I agree. It does look professional. It seems to be nowadays being professional means needing money, which is quite frustrating. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate necessity, especially for ugly bastards like us to have high quality video.
You have to make it a bit more jazzy to entice the viewers, I think.
Yeah, true.
Good
Excellent.
to hear it. Nice one. Got to say hello to the Ramblers as well. Oh, you just set the payment. Cool. I've just received the payment. I wonder what happened then. Brilliant. Yeah, Kyle, we'll add you to the group thing in a bit when this ends. I don't think you've missed out anything in that time, so.
Meat squared.
Hard to believe there's any money to be made on YouTube. Honestly, not really. I mean, unless you can go about it two ways. You can use it to sell a server that you have, or you can get people to like you, donate money to your channel. That works quite well depending on what kind of audience you have. On that note, I would like to thank Jenny, who donated, I believe it was to my Patreon membership thing. So I appreciate that. Thank you. It was actually last week, but I'm saying thank you now because I forgot on Monday. So, but yeah, some people honestly, Rick, they make heaps of money. I think I'm earning. I can actually tell you guys now what I'm doing. In the last 28 days, excluding off-platform donations, £43.45. Yeah, and that's a good month for me. So you're not making heaps of money, but you know. What about you, Jerome? How much do you make off YouTube?
Oh, right now 0. You need to have 1,000 subscribers to monetize your channel, and like I said, I view my channel mostly as a reservoir of information for my clients. But when it gets to that point, I'll figure out creative ways to try and incentivize people at a very, very cost affordable option.
Yeah, there's lots of different things we can do on this. I think, like I've said to you and you guys countless of times, I'll provide a service that everyone can access at some point in some way. You know, there's not going to be an excuse not to spend some money. In essence, as bad as that sounds, but yeah. All right, I forgot what we're doing today. We're doing a Q&A.
It is a Q&A.
Oh yeah. So I'm just admiring the jazziness of all this nonsense around us. So
yeah, I think we were spent the first 7 minutes putting the rambling in Carnivore Muscle Ramblings, but that's why it's in the title, right?
There's more. Yeah. So Jerome, when you did like the hour or so on your own that Friday a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, 45 minutes of that was you providing solid answers to good questions. 15 minutes of it was rambling. When me and you do it, or Sophie and I, and yourself do it, it's around 25 minutes of rambling I've worked out on average. So your rambling is actually quite significant, apparently.
Well, thank you. I'm happy that you're able to make a few pence off of some of those clips that you're putting out.
Yeah. Should I tell you guys how much I made in the last one? Just for instance sake, I find it quite funny. Yeah, and the last one that I made with Jerome, it was, well, that's a 0 piece. It's not gone through yet.
It's at the point
not
where
a good sign.
Homeless people are giving Jonathan money.
Okay, here we go. So one that you did 5 days ago, static holds one, 13 pence.
Excellent.
I'm not paying you a dime of it.
That's fine. I'll take the 3 pence. You can keep the dime.
Nice. All right. I'm trying to think what else I was going to do. I'm not doing very well today, am I?
You're doing wonderful. Don't you doubt yourself for a second.
Everyone's tuned out already. Waiting for us to answer some questions. We've got an announcement to make, haven't we, though, to be fair?
Do we?
One announcement
to me too.
About the Q&A.
Oh, you should go ahead and make that announcement then.
Okay. All right. So, for the foreseeable future, at least unless something happens or needs to change, we will no longer be doing Carnivore Muscle Ramblings. On Fridays. That was like like a drum roll kind of thing, you know.
I think everybody had to wait and pause too to think if your connection was dropping out or if you were being serious or not.
No, it's just going to be the Mondays we'll be doing now. So I looked at my schedule over the next few months, and Fridays seem to be a bit. I don't like to be inconsistent. At the same time, I wouldn't expect Jerome to do this on his own because it wouldn't be fair or put that on him as in terms of giving him the extra pressure. So there's a few Fridays of months that I'm not able to do, and also at the same time they're a bit less busy, it seems. So I'm gonna keep it to the Mondays instead of Fridays off as well. You guys don't need to hear me on Fridays. You're probably tired from work all week.
Well, and Jonathan, between the Muscle Ramblings and being on Bart's channel and the Carnivore coaching crew, you're putting out a good 6+ hours or so of live Q&A anyways. So there's a lot of quality information on this channel.
Yes, that's why I'm able to make so many clips. Like I've got roughly 2 months worth of clips from say the last few weeks. All good answers to good questions. So they're basically I tried to format them in a way so that people can rehash a certain topic or a point that they've asked about. So it just helps people out a little bit. So maybe we've discussed something in this video 2 to 3 weeks from now, maybe a bit longer. We'll discuss the same point again on a clip. Then you might understand it better the second time. So I think it's helpful for people. Sometimes you need to hear it multiple times to understand what's going on.
Mm.
And yes, Islam's 13 pence. Excellent. All right. We'll do some questions in the chat first. So, question from Sophie. Do you think it's useful to change your workouts from a push-pull legs split to just targeting areas that need improvement? So, for example, she's saying, should you increase the frequency of your workouts in order to have preferential treatment for specific body parts? What do you think, Drew?
Workout frequency is going to be one thing that is going to be heavily determined by your already existing recovery ability. The way that I prefer prioritizing weak body parts is to put them earlier in your training workouts or reduce the volume or frequency of muscle groups that are already a little bit bigger and stronger. So for any workout, again, you're creating a physical stress to the body. And as such, your body has a limited capacity with which it can recover from that physical stress. So if you cut back a little bit on the muscle groups that you're doing a little bit stronger with, you have more recovery ability potentially available for those smaller, weaker muscles or whatever it is you're trying to bring up. And then the reason that I'll put some of those muscles that you're trying to bring up closer towards the beginning of your workout is in general you're most focused, most fresh, and most capable of exerting a high degree of effort and concentration on those movements at the beginning of your workout compared to the end of your workouts. I don't know how most people are, but with myself, with my clients, I imagine Jonathan probably doesn't have the same degree of focus on his very last set of his workout or the last couple of sets compared to the first couple. But I could be very wrong. Maybe he's just a mental stud in that regard. So I wouldn't necessarily, if you have a push-pull leg split or an upper-lower split or whatever your current workout split is, if it's at a volume and frequency that you seem to be recovering from and still making improvement upon, I wouldn't mess with that frequency to try and bring up weaker muscle groups. I would just make them a bigger priority and dial back on the things that are seemingly doing really well is kind of how I would approach that. What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, very well said. Very, very well said. I think it's a case of if it ain't broke, do not fix it. Saying that if someone is doing a free waist split, an example of a push-pull legs, then I don't think they need to split it up any further than that, really. The only instances where someone would have to do it is perhaps if they're a very advanced bodybuilder, where, for example, they've built up all the muscle mass that they probably ever need, but they're looking to maybe gain half an inch on their biceps, in which case they might just do the push-pull leg split, but then on the back end of legs, assuming separate to the push day, so they'd have rest between the push day and the legs day, or the pull day and the legs day, sorry, then in that case they might actually add on biceps to the end of the legs day, or even the start of the leg day. So that's kind of how much you'd want to go in terms of splitting up your body parts. Now, saying that, you can, in essence, split it up in very different ways. Jerome and I were talking recently about an example where a bodybuilder might actually train a body part that is strong for them very infrequently. So they might actually just do a push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull split. So 8 sessions over 2 weeks. Then on that third week, they might actually do the leg session because their quads, hams, and calves are so dominant. You know, that's an example which is probably few and far between. But I think looking at your question and how it sort of pans out, I don't know if splitting it up any further would be beneficial. And of course, we've got to talk about the fact that we have to train using standardized form that has the right intensity to it. So what I mean by that is, if, for example, you're looking to build up your triceps, I mean, I know I am, I'm using exercises that I find I can recover from well, can get stronger in, get a good muscular contraction in that feels safe, that I can standardize as well as I can. So for me, an example of something to build up my triceps might be a bench dip. I'm locked in position. I can't go anywhere. I can't cheat. There's no inertia that I can really add to the lift itself. I can load it safely. I can put a weight on my chest or my groin area. Then I can lift it with my triceps quite safely and just put the weight down as I need to. So how that might look for someone that's trying to improve triceps, for example, is they might have an extra session for triceps on the pull day, assuming they've got enough rest period between the push day and the pull day itself. Saying that, I think there's a fine line between training and getting some beneficial growth and overtraining. So I don't think that's something which would happen in many instances. So long story short, make sure your training is effective, safe, specify the movements that you're trying to improve certain parts further towards the beginning of your session. Also factor in that you're measuring and tracking your strength levels and you're making sure your technique is the same throughout every movement. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just wanted to reiterate that your progress chart, assuming you're writing down everything you do in your workouts, is going to be the best arbiter of whether or not any further adjustments need to be made to your routine. My client this morning, oddly enough, is a 81-year-old woman. And last week she came in and she just felt really strong and her numbers were great. And today she was a little concerned that, you know, she didn't feel like she was all there, but she had bigger improvements going into this workout, even though she didn't feel like she was fully there. So it all goes back to your progress chart, and volume and frequency are just dials that get manipulated based on how your body responds. So the more meticulous you can be with tracking your progress, the better.
Yeah, very well said. Excellent stuff. So a question from Lambs. Any thoughts on how a 190 centimeter or 6'3" tall guy is gaining muscle on 80 grams of protein and 150 grams of fat? Jerome, what do you reckon towards that?
Sure. So Goldberg in 1975 did a study where he cut the gastrocnemius on rats to expose the soleus underneath, and he ran them really hard on a treadmill. And these mice were starved, and they were chemically castrated, and they had their sleep interrupted. So they had everything working against them. And despite not having any of those seemingly normal necessary preconditions for muscle growth, just the physical activity and the intensity of the muscular contraction on the soleus was enough to produce hypertrophy in that muscle group. So while I think 80 grams of protein is really, really, really low, and for a lot of people, especially if you're engaging in some degree of strength training, you're probably going to be better off having more protein than that. I do think it is enough to stimulate some growth in muscle groups. The RDA for protein here in the United States was established in, post World War II, I think, individuals, and they measured an amount of protein that could be consumed that wouldn't lead to nitrogen loss. It led to a positive nitrogen balance. And they set the RDA 2 standard deviations above the statistical mean. So 97.5% of the population won't experience net protein balance when consuming something like 50 to 60 grams a day. Now 80 is over that. And I think 80 is still really, really, really low, but I think it is enough to produce some growth if the intensity of your physical training is sufficient. And then to bookend my thoughts before I hand this over to Jonathan, the thing with Goldberg's rats is the soleus was able to grow, but it came at the atrophy of other muscle groups in the body. So the danger with running your protein relatively low is it could potentially produce growth in areas that you need based on your resistance training. But if that protein threshold is too low, it could be coming at the expense of other tissues. So I've gone as low as 70 or 80 grams a day. I seem to do well with it, but I work out very, very low volume and relatively infrequent. And I think even bumping that up to 100 grams a day would be a pretty safe idea to consider. What do you think?
I definitely think there is a minimum that we need to get that protein turnover, switched on just right for each person. And our hunger signals will dictate if we need more or less. So it can be quite an individual thing. I also think as well, what comes into it is perhaps what other activity they're doing. If a person is doing, for example, a low activity, lifestyle where they're training once per week, but then they're eating 80 grams of very good quality protein with plenty of leucine, enough to get that protein synthesis spike, then yeah, of course they probably can gain some muscle. The other thing to factor in is this 190 centimeter tall individual very thin? Are they starting from a standpoint where they only weigh 120 pounds? In which case, if they're very thin and quite sedentary, then yeah, of course they can probably still gain muscle because they don't need much to actually build upon that amount of muscle that they might already have. The other thing as well is just in my anecdotal experience, when I was a younger man, sorry, because I know that'll offend some people. When I was a much younger man, maybe the age of like 13 years old, I was probably taking in like perhaps 70 grams of protein a day, so a bit less than whoever this gentleman is. And I was effectively having a chicken pasta pot at lunchtime. Breakfast was a bowl of fruit and fibre or cereal with some milk. And dinner might have been a couple of cookies and a chicken breast and a packet of rice, like a microwave rice. So yeah, it's about 60, 70 grams of protein each day. In that time, I still built muscle and I still got ripped. Your body has different hormonal processes, which mean that you can effectively improve what your outcomes are with minimal input intake. Contrast to that fact, when I did my 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 day fast, whatever it was, when I was like 10 years old, I didn't lose any weight. So that just goes to show, especially at a younger age, how impactful your hormones can affect things. So I'd look at something like the age of the individual, the actual original body mass of the individual as well, the activity levels, and perhaps they are just a hyper responder that seems to get away with whatever they like. So it's a good place to be in, I think, perhaps. At least if you don't want to be eating, 3, 4, 5 meals a day like a lot of bodybuilders do. Oh yeah, so Fox has asked, how good is strength as an indicator of recovery status? I think it's pretty solid, Jerome. What do you think?
Yeah, first, I like the username. I need to be careful saying that. Yeah, it's probably a pretty good indicator. I was curious what your thoughts are. I guess I would use it as one of many indicators. How do you feel that day? How do you feel like you slept? Are you kind of looking forward to your workout, or are you dreading it? But yeah, it's probably a pretty good indicator. I've never really considered it though.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you can consistently do bar breaking your wrist or fracturing your hand. So it's something, if you can measure it each morning before a training session, then yeah, it's worth doing. Saying that, it is a good indicator, but there are a number that we could use. Ones that I might mention to people are how you feel when you wake up in the morning. Do you sort of dread getting up? Is it that you're sore and a lot of pain? That would suggest to me that you're not well recovered. That's pretty common knowledge, but some people don't often think about that. They just push and force themselves through these situations. Another thing might be your scale weight. So, for example, if you know that your body is very dehydrated because, say, you've not drank in several hours, at least like you're not drank overnight, you're not drank all afternoon, your weight could be really far down. That means you're not hydrated enough. So I'd look at that as an indicator as well. Of course, dry lips, hydration. Other things to watch out for as well are how you feel, like socially. Like, say you live with a partner or you live with your brother or family or sister or whatever it is. Do you feel more irritable? Is it that you're struggling to have conversations with them? Is it that you feel a bit like, I don't know what the word is, a bit recluse maybe? That could be an indicator as well that you're overtraining perhaps and you've not recovered properly. But yeah, there's lots of things you can pick apart. And there probably are much better measures. I mean, there's things out there like the heart rate variability. Some people even actually buy those those watches or Aura rings, sorry. And they're looking at their measurements through that. I mean, I think that gives you a qualitative data point to look at, but it doesn't speak true for how you might feel in yourself. So it's an indicator, but like I said, it's just a tool and it's just an indicator ultimately. So I'd look at a summary of all of those things if you can, but at the same time, don't sort of invest in all these extra things. I don't think a lot of it's worthwhile. Unless you're really unsure, then maybe go ahead and buy some of these things. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Posterior chain is important, but that's just my opinion. Yes.
It is.
I think I'm missing context.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure on that either, but
it's probably one of our earlier talks.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when that comment came up in the conversation, or when his comment hit the chat. But feel free to provide a little context, and we can touch on that in a little bit.
Oh yeah. When I tried weight training in the 1980s, I was eating a lot and gained nothing. That was another retried vegetarian diet. Oh wow, you tried vegetarian diet to gain weight. Yeah. That's one of the most ironic things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Saying that though, in all fairness, if you're doing the vegetarian diet nowadays with all the vegetarian products, yes, it's very likely that someone could easily gain fat on it. But then if you're talking about a vegetarian that does whole foods, so you're just eating fruit and veg pretty much from the supermarket, from the grocery shop, the greengrocers, whatever you want to call it, then yeah, it's going to be hard to gain weight. I think you're essentially omitting two nutrients, two essential nutrients from your diet in a lot of cases, if you're doing like the raw food kind of thing. So yeah, I probably wouldn't try it, and I wouldn't recommend anyone try the vegetarian diet personally.
Same.
Not for health purposes anyway, not performance purposes. So according to Craig Emmerich's calculator, I should have at least 148 grams of protein for muscle retention. He didn't believe my case. I'm 80 kilograms, by the way. I've looked at the calculator myself. Have you had a chance to look at it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, so
I will make a note. I'll make a note and I'll
look
at it. Because that sounds like it sounds
I've
like
looked
a good
at it.
recommendation. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say it sounds like a good recommendation, but in terms of like a minimum, so you retain muscle, yeah, I think you can get away with a lot lower than that, depending on how active you are in your genetics. In general, most people I think should probably have a minimum of about 100 grams of protein a day, just to make sure they're getting enough. And then, depending on a lot of factors, you could go significantly higher. But it's kind of a loose estimate. I think most people should get between 100 and 200 grams a day. But yeah, 148 to just maintain the muscle that you have, that's, you don't need that much just for maintenance.
Yeah. I can see it from both points of view. So what we know about people like that just have any diet, or the average person walking around the street, is they probably don't eat enough protein. They probably eat too much carbs and fats. So if they're able to hit, 148, 150 grams of protein for an average sort of size gentleman, yeah, that would do wonders for their health. I'm assuming it was like animal foods to get that protein intake. They're going to hit that hunger signal. They're going to be more satiated. They're going to get some nutrient density, the B vitamins, amino acids, the electrolytes, the reduced insulin load of their body. Yes, that would be beneficial to their health outcomes and probably their body composition as well, because they wouldn't be eating so much extra crap. However, saying that, on that point, I've looked at their calculator and it does put me at a very low intake of energy substrate based on my activity levels, but quite a high level of protein. Bear in mind, I've been doing this for a long time now, guys. I'm not like a beginner, so I've worked out what does and doesn't work, at least to probably plus or minus 10% degree for most cases. And I'm thinking 148 grams for someone who's 80 kilograms is a lot. Now, of course, like Jerome said, there's a level of activity that you should measure, and how much you need in terms of your protein take would be scaled dependent on the activity level that you have. So, for example, if you're resistance training, you're doing, 20 sets 4 times per week, God forbid, then yeah, you'll probably be on that high side. Of course, if you're on a lower volume amount like Jerome is, so I don't know, 15, 20 sets a week or something around that sort of ballpark figure, then yeah, you can get away with a lot less. For a point of reference, I train ideally somewhere between 10 and 12 sets per workout. I'd say 8 to 10 of them are to, at the very least, concentric muscular failure. And I take in somewhere between 200 and maybe 250 grams of protein per day. I do feel like 250 is a bit too much at times. But at the same time, 200 could also be too low. So what I look at outside of all that is, am I reaching my fat target for the day? So my substrate need. If, for example, I undereat fat, so I'm not adding loads of butter or tallow, whatever it is, to my meals, then my appetite for protein will go up. And I'll be having a perhaps less beneficial or less healthful energy substrate through the form of glucose by default of gluconeogenesis. So I think we have 2 individual macros, the protein and the fat, and then we need to get the right amount of protein with the right amount of fat, dependent on our goals. So we're not looking at these in as like a ratio, a percentage. These are individual levers. We need to find the right amount of each. So we don't ever want to eat too much or too little of either. At the same time, we have to reach our goals, body composition. So you might have to up or minus some of those, but it's very individual. So I wouldn't recommend following calculators by any means.
They can be a really good starting point, as is pretty much any diet or calculator or training plan. But after some amount of time, 4-6 weeks, depending on how your body's responding, you will have to make changes. And over time, like Jonathan said, he has it figured out for his body and for his activity, and he knows how to make the changes to his body and his diet, his activity to accommodate that. So it's just a starting point, and you will make changes from there.
Perfect. Very well said. We've got a question from Andre. So apologies, Andre, we couldn't get to your question last time on, I think it was Tuesdays of Carnivore Coaches Corner. So for a point of reference, just so you know for future, I don't think I explained it very well at the start. The Carnivore Coaches Corner will be a topic to start on something we select behind the scenes. So, for example, we'll have general discussion between myself and the other 2 coaches about 1 or 2 given topics. After that point, if we have time, we'll go into some questions in the live chat. So it's not a guaranteed way to get an answer, which is a pain in the backside, I understand, but it's just the way we're formatting things at the moment based on what we're trying to achieve with what is going to be a podcast, essentially. But yes, we'll get to it in these sort of segments because we are the Carnivore Muscle Ramblings.
And
Anyway,
I think this,
I'll ask the
and I
question now.
appreciate that, Andre, because I think this is your exact question from last time, and I made a note of it. Just we haven't gotten to that point yet. So Andre says about set intensifiers. How do you account them in your weekly training volume? Do you see a drop set or a rest pause set as one set, half a set, or a third of a set? Do not take time under tension into consideration of these sets. Jonathan, you want this first, or you want me to answer it?
I'll have a go. Yes. So, by sound of it, he is asking what counts as training volume and what counts as a set. Now, this is a very individual, how long is a piece of string kind of question and answer. So I wouldn't be able to give you a direct guideline on what you should do. So this is where you watch our videos and you find out, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what's not working, back and forth kind of thing. You should take the information from these into account when you're asking questions. You'll be able to find a way to apply what you've experienced and what you currently experience in your training, and think about how that's going to go towards getting you better results. So to outline what I think is what constitutes as training volume or a set. If you do 3 sets of 10 and perhaps you have a minute rest between them, yes, you're doing 3 sets of 10 repetitions. So you'd log that as, assuming you're using the same weight, you might write 3 times 10, 50 kilos, or whatever weight you have to be using. And obviously the exercise at the top, so lat pull down, for example. So that's 3 sets. If you're going to then say, okay, I'm going to move on to a chest supported row, you might do 1 straight set, so 1 times 10, the weight, so say 50 kilos again. Then say, for example, you think, oh, I'm going to add some spice to the mix. I'm going to up the ante. You'll do a rest pause set, perhaps. So then it will be 1 times 10 dash 4 dash 3 dash 2. Now, the 10 at the start is just whatever default hypothetical number that you're trying to achieve from that set is. So it's not a set in stone amount. The second set, assuming you're taking your first set to failure, will be less than your first set, of course, because you're losing muscle strength. The fibers are almost burnt out. They're exhausted. So you might do 10, then 4. Then again, it would be more exhausted. So you might do 3, then for example 2. So that would all constitute 1 set. So the way I'd write that is 10-4-3-2. Then the idea of that is that you keep the same rest period between each of those, what I call mini sets. So it's still one overarching set comprised of mini sets. So you try to keep that amount the same. So you can either use the amount of breaths you take as your default measurement, or you can use time.
You knocked off for the last maybe 5 or 6 seconds.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to recap those thoughts, but you said that you consider that 1 set and you're trying to hold the time steady with those mini sets. And then anything you kind of said after that got lost.
Yeah. So you're trying to keep the time the same, standardized. So what I mean by that is you're doing perhaps 3 breaths, 4 breaths, 5 breaths. So find an amount that works for you. Or you might do 10, 15 seconds. You can time that, but I find that it takes away from the intensity if you're looking at a phone, looking at things on the wall, clocks, It can be another thing to think about, which takes away from the intensity of the workout itself. So that's how I'd consider a set to be made up of. Now, in terms of time and attention, I do have a video on my channel which I answered from Zbigniew, I believe, with Jerome at some point. I believe it is out already, or it might be out in the next few weeks. It's something like what counts as time and attention. I think personally that the 3 sets of 10 would count as, assuming you took 60 seconds to do each set, it'd be 60, 20, 180. So 180 seconds, 3 sets. If your rest pause set is, say counting the time but not the reps itself, it might be, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, something like that. Then that would be, I need to do math here, 48 seconds or whatever it happens to be. So that would count as a time attention for that set. And that is not including the rest time between those sets. So that's how I'd calculate time attention. Now, if you're looking at it from the point that you want to make it simple, then assuming you could standardize the time to tension, or sorry, the rest between each set, or each mini set of that rest pause set, then you might say, okay, I'm going to take exactly 10 seconds between each mini set. You might then just count the whole set. So, for example, you might say, I'm always doing 10 seconds rest between 3 sets, so 30 seconds. You'll take that away from the full set itself. So if you know you spent 2 minutes doing the set, yeah, so 90 seconds for the whole set. That's how I'd work out time to tension. So you got 2 different metrics there: a way to log the workout, what counts as rest pause set, and how that might apply to your training.
Excellent. So the way that I see it, everything you do from the time that you start the exercise until when you finally set the weight down and you're done, I consider that one set, whether you have intensifiers in there or not. With myself and with my clients, I like all of my sets to be from anywhere from 45 seconds up to about 2 minutes. And if someone can't get 60 seconds on their own, to the point of concentric failure, and they start failing before then I'll start using set intensifiers to get them up to anywhere from 90 seconds to 2 minutes. But I still consider that one set. In that regard, it doesn't matter really, in a sense, if you count that as one set or 2 sets or 3 sets or however many sets, as long as you're tracking it consistently. If you call that 5 sets, just be consistent when you do it and call it 5 sets if they're rest pause or drop sets or whatever. But the consistency is what is important there. And I take those times, even if I'm doing rest pause, I take the total number of time for that set into consideration. So whenever I do rest pause with clients, I almost always do 5 seconds with rest pause, because I don't do a lot of rest pause repetitions, even though I do use rest pause with clients. So if somebody hits concentric failure on their own, they're lifting as hard as they can, the weight is not moving up, they're pushing, their face is turning red, they're continuing to breathe, they're shaking a little bit and it's not moving, and we're right at 45 seconds. Usually at that point, we could either do forced repetitions, and I'll make a note on their progress chart that at 45 seconds, that's where they stopped on their own. And then we'll either do forced repetitions, we'll do drop sets, or we'll do rest pause until they hit generally 90 seconds. Depending on the client, sometimes I take that a little bit longer, closer to 2 minutes. So don't get too caught up in trying to figure out exactly how to count and measure all of this. If you're consistent and if your numbers are moving up in the gym, then whatever you're doing is good enough at that time. And you can always make a different distinction down the road.
Yeah, I can certainly vouch for that opinion. At the end of the day, we can get very nitty-gritty, very granular, very scientific, very calculated about our training. Yeah. Ultimately, we're not robotic. So what will apply in one workout might not apply to the next workout. Your rest periods won't always be exactly 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes. You might forget to time your set. Your shoulder might be bad like mine was today, so I wasn't able to lift in the same sort of rep range I was previously. So there's always going to be something which can prevent you from being perfect exactly as you want. My best suggestion to anyone that's concerned about time to tension, doing a bit too much or a bit too little, is just get stuck in with it and find something that works. Look at your metrics for your workouts, look at your training performance, look at your improvements week on week and see, is it working or is it not working? If it isn't working, go back to the drawing board and start again.
Yeah. And Jonathan, can I give one final thought on this question? Thank you. Andre, you and I are in a lot of the same circles, and same with Jonathan. There's a lot of people within the HIIT community that have varying thoughts about set intensifiers. So if you were to hypothetically ask this same question to 10 or 100 different people within the high intensity training community, you might get 10 or 100 different answers. When I was talking to Rick Chartrand, he told me he interviewed someone recently who, as soon as their repetition slows down on that last repetition or two, they consider that when the set has essentially reached failure. So for that individual, if they're following a 4-4 cadence and all of a sudden, one of those last repetitions starts taking 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, they consider the set is over there. People like Drew Bay think set intensifiers are basically pointless to use to try and raise the intensity. I enjoy using them, but I use them in the context of trying to keep every set within a somewhat narrow range of time under tension. So you're going to get a lot of different opinions, but Jonathan is absolutely right in what he said, that just see how it works for you and your training and anybody that you might exercise with. And if it's not working, then you go back to the drawing board and make the adjustment. So you're going to get a broad variety of answers with this question.
Yes, I completely agree. It's very challenging when there's lots of people out there with different points of view, which is why we try to make very specific standpoints in what we say. So when we're talking about concentric muscular failure, we're talking about getting to the point where you can no longer move the weight in a positive fashion. It's not going anywhere. So, for example, God forbid, the bench press, you've got it down here, you push it out to here, you know, without like straining something or using inertia to actually move the weight further forward. That's what I call concentric muscular failure, where there's no more go to it. That's where I'd say, to a lot of people at least, stop. That's not to say you could take it to the next level, do the static. You can hold at that position for a bit, probably for quite a good period of time. Then if you're even more advanced and you've got the recovery capacity, you can lower it, do the eccentric phase. And it's also under the premise that you're lowering it as slow as you can. So there's lots of ways to skin a cat. And I find rest pauses quite fun because they do extend your sets and they kind of measure how much intensity you can put over a long period of time. Because I think that's what us men like to do, like see how much we can suffer.
True. Well said.
So there was this strange idea that eating any meat would make you impotent and skinny. Funny that, yeah, people come up with really crazy things sometimes, don't they? I don't know. I just want to notify the Carnivore Muscle Ramblers live Q&A. I've been beseeched with a very large donation just now from Zbigniew, who's one of my coaching clients. You'll see him in the chat from time to time. He's quite an avid and keen member of my channel. Look at my membership options as well. It's quite a useful thing to have next to your name sometimes, to have a little star, which looks quite cool. Anyway, he's donated me very kindly, which really nearly teared me up. I was quite shocked, but he's donated me £50 towards my new laptop investment, which I very much appreciate. I appreciate it even more because I've just invested quite a bit of money onto this StreamYard setup that I now have. So that's it's, I'm not sure the word is, it's good karma in a sense, because I was looking at this thinking it's going to be expensive and I could lose out on this, it's not going to be warranted, but it's kind of paid back in a sense, so I very much appreciate it. Thank you, Zbigniew.
He's a super guy. He's always got an incredible attitude, and he's in the Carnivore Crew Facebook group, and he's seemingly the first one to offer positive feedback and a lot of love and appreciation whenever anybody posts anything. He's always one of the first people to comment, and it always brightens my day to hear from Zbigniew.
Yes, same. I look forward to check-ins on a Sunday. We always have good little chats and things. Hey Richard, how's it going? Nice to see you. Very good. I'm just going to go through some ramblings right now.
Sure.
The Randall cycle kindly explained to us how much protein is in 1.5 pounds of steak. What's that like? 227, 600, I don't know, 680, 3, 4, 1. 681, I think, grams of steak. That's quite a lot of steak.
Right around. Yeah, it's a good size meal.
More steak than what I eat. Yeah. We're doing some calculations. Carnivore muscle calculations.
There's a range. I buy 73.27 ground beef, and 4 ounces is 17 grams of protein. So 1 pound of really, really, really fatty ground beef is 68 grams of protein. You get a little bit leaner, it's closer to 100. So anywhere from probably about 70 to 100 grams a pound.
I've got a question for you, Jerome. What would you consider to be a large amount of protein to eat in one sitting? Assuming it was like, I don't know, beef burgers.
Um, the most I've ever eaten was like 3.5 pounds. But for me, generally I usually don't have more than a pound of meat in a meal.
Okay. What would you consider to be an amazing amount of beef to eat in terms of like burgers?
Um, anything over 3 pounds, even a kilo of meat in one sitting is a lot at once. But I've seen videos of Sean Baker eating 4 or 5 pounds of steak at once, so that's pretty impressive too. Why are you
Okay, if
knocking
you
back
carry on rambling, I've got
exorbitant
a
amounts
project. I've got a project. I'm just going to do some mathematics for you now.
Sure. So I had a birthday 2 or 3 years ago. I'll have to go back, and I ate 3.5 pounds of skirt steak that was marinated in one sitting, and I had to cook it in a couple of different ways. So I had like 2 pans going plus a instant pot, and that was a lot of meat.
I'm going to be eating close to or around 3 kilos of beef in one
In
sitting.
one sitting. Excellent. When's that happening?
I don't know.
Tonight? Okay. I thought like the second we
Nah,
got done with the ramblings, you were
nah.
gonna.
I might do. Yeah, about 6 pounds, I think.
Yeah.
Just because it's a good number, which it sounds like a lot, but not so much that it's gonna kill me or make me choke.
Okay.
So I'll I'm gonna post that on my channel at some point when I do that. But it'll be a quite an entertaining video, but it'll kind of show you guys how much food that is. It's not something I would usually recommend to anyone. No one needs that much food. No one. So
Mhm.
unless you're like a 10-foot giant, maybe. Sophie's been stocking up, by the way.
Excellent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pretty close.
I thought 2 pounds was 908 grams.
It depends how lean the meat is. So really fatty ground beef is 68 grams in a pound
Oh, in
over
terms of
here, and then
fat, sorry.
yeah,
I see what you mean.
sorry,
Sorry,
protein.
I read it as the actual weight for weight rather than
Oh, no.
yeah. I see what you mean now. Yeah.
So yeah, there's
Like
what
200
400.
grams. I've been eating like kilos of meat.
No, there's 454 grams in a pound.
Nice. It's 3 to 12 eggs, quarter of yogurt, and 4 ounces cheese. Yeah, that sounds like what it's usually been doing. To be fair.
That sounds great.
Right. Where are we? Okay. Losing the chat. There's so much going on. It's heaving. Sorry, guys. I'm going down there just to get the questions. Yeah, Rick, I think you need to eat more. A lot of the fat that you cook comes out of your meat. You'd have to add a ridiculous amount of lard, tallow, or butter to the meat you're eating to get enough fat to match the fat that's coming out of the food if you're boiling it, by the way. You probably just eat too lean. If you're eating like 3 pounds of meat a day, I can't think of many people that do that. I mean, I'm probably having about 1 to 1.5 pounds of meat a day at the moment. I can see myself getting up to about 2, but that's about it, really. I don't see more than that because I have a very mixed carnivore diet, of course. So, All right, we've got another question. Oh, this is a good question. Okay, I'm going to read it.
Sure.
Do you guys have? Sorry, I'm going to read it again. Wait. Have you guys read anything on muscle recovery and how long it takes for a muscle to fully recover from high intensity exercise? I've only found one good study with the muscle of the biceps after 4 days of training. That's the question. So we're assuming that muscle recovery in this instance is muscle protein synthesis. We can also assume it's the relaxation or the release of damage, oxidative damage from the muscle fiber tissues. Are there byproducts that are produced which are going down in kind of a trend fashion because you're more recovered over time? Is it measured in the strength that someone is able to perform from day one versus day 4 of training? So yeah, I'd have to look at that study myself, and perhaps Jerome has looked at it already. But all I say for my main point based on this question is, are you able to train maximally after 4 days of rest? So you could, in theory, train biceps on day 1, then again on day 4 or 5. If your training is very hard, then it'll be unlikely that you'll be able to match your training intensity, your effort, your strength level from the first day. That's not to say it can't be done, but it becomes more challenging if you're training very hard, especially when it comes to the context of the question, which is high intensity exercise. So what do you think, Jerome?
I think it's going to be one of those things that is going to be so highly individualized based on the person that we're talking about. Some people recover very, very quickly from exercise and have a tolerance for a high volume of exercise. So I'm reminded of John Little, the guy that co-wrote Body by Science, has a bod pod in his gym called Nautilus North up in Canada. And the bod pod is a extremely accurate way of measuring body composition. So in having his own unit, he was able to take people that went to his gym and trained and test their body composition and asking them to reduce their food intake. And then he manipulated the volume and frequency of the exercise while measuring body composition. So one of the key points from him with his cohort is he started everybody off on just 5 exercises once a week. And most people did really, really well with that and were able to lose body fat and gain muscle at the same time. But to get up to like 98%, 99% of the people that went to his gym to continue to lose fat and build muscle at the same time, some people had to have their frequency reduced down to only 2 total sets once a week. I have a client whose anecdotes I've pointed out before. His name was Matt. He lost 50 pounds in 6 months. We started 3 days a week, but as he got stronger, I had to cut back on the volume and frequency. And at the end of our time together, he was only exercising once with 6 total sets of workout every 10 to 14 days. So yeah, muscle protein synthesis as just that one single measure will return back to baseline levels. So you exercise, it goes up, and then it'll go back down to baseline after about 24, well, in some individuals, 24 hours, but most people, 48 to 72 hours, 2 to 3 days, it'll get back to baseline. But a lot of that's going to depend on your genetics. Diet can have some influence, and also the volume and frequency that you're doing with your high intensity training. It's going to be so individualized that, you know, I'm a little remiss to try and give some general recommendations for people. As a starting point, full body workout 3 days a week is usually enough time to recover, but then depending on how somebody's making progress or not making progress, then you manipulate the volume and the frequency. So initially, I tend to think it recovers for people a lot faster because the magnitude of the stress from the exercise isn't as big as it will be 6 months or a year down the road when you get stronger. You know, if you can only lift 50 pounds overhead when you first start exercising, that's not as big of a stress as a year or two down the road when you're lifting 200 pounds overhead. And it stands to reason that as you get stronger, the physical stress becomes bigger. And because the physical stress is bigger, it takes more time to recover from. So unfortunately, there's some fluidity in this answer. Depending on where you are, it'll be fully recovered when it's fully recovered. It could be 1 or 2 days. It could be, 7 to 10 to 15 plus days.
Yeah, very well said. Do you think that there's an element of neural adaptation? I think you kind of alluded to it. So it might be that your muscle fibers seem repaired to 90% perhaps after 4 days. However, is it that after 4 days you've still got that neural fatigue, especially as you become more advanced? So the 100 kilogram shoulder press that I do versus the 100 kilogram shoulder press that I did a year ago, now it might be easier because I've adapted my neural pathways. Whereas for a beginner lifting 50 kilograms versus me being lifting 50, the adaptation would be more tricky because the person has only just lifted that weight versus someone
Yep.
who's more experienced.
Yep. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Strength corresponds very well to hypertrophy, but there's more that causes strength than just hypertrophy alone. So in general, if you're getting stronger, it's a pretty good indication for the most part that you're probably building some degree of muscle. But to see things from the other point of view with kind of neuromuscular adaptations, it would be possible for a lot of people to train the same muscle group every single day and to continue to see strength improvements for some period of time. Not necessarily because the muscle is getting bigger, but you're just becoming more efficient at that pathway. So size and strength will correlate really, really well for the most part. But that's one of a number of measures that you kind of used to try and figure out if you feel like you're recovered for that next workout.
Very well said. Thanks for your answer to that. And yeah, he just said 90%. So yeah,
Gotcha.
Cool stuff. Great to hear this reviewed in detail. Yes, ask good questions. You'll get our best answers. Very good. You'll get two of us as well. Two people, not one.
Yeah.
I think we should do it. Bar doesn't have like 20 people on the panel.
That could be fun.
Apparently, with the new StreamYard thing, I can host up to, I think it's 10 people.
Oh, we'll have to try that sometime.
I'm terrified. It'll be too exhausting, and I'll get nervous.
You can always kick
I get
people.
too shy. I can. I was about to do it. Yeah, I could do it right now. No, I'll leave it.
See you guys. Okay.
I'll leave it.
I can take a hint. I know when I'm not wanted anymore.
All right. Yeah, Andrew said, thank you guys. This was very helpful, especially for someone like me who's trying to perform one set to fairly poor exercise. That's probably in some exercises like leg press to reach failure in one attempt. Yes, Jerome and I will both agree with certainty. Over our training careers, there's been very little instances where we've been able to train to failure on a difficult leg exercise. We can do it on perhaps leg extensions, leg curls, calves, adductors, abductors maybe, but anything really tricky where it's going to be hard to rack, there's a weight on you which could squash you. Very few times I've been able to train to eccentric failure, at least doing that kind of methodology.
Yeah. There's a gentleman named Daniel Thompson that runs a channel called Exercise Thoughts and Discussions. And he has a video where he talks about his entire life, and he's super slow guild certified. I think he's worked for Arthur Jones, or at least he's met Arthur a couple of times. And having trained in high intensity training fashion for, I believe, over 30 years now, I think he says he's only really hit muscular failure maybe like 2 or 3 times out of 30 years. So even the word failure is, Jonathan knows I don't like that word. We need to come up with better terminology, but I get how it's used conventionally. Push your sets as hard as you safely can. And if you feel like you have more in the tank, do a second, do a third, do a fourth set until you just feel like there's nothing in the tank, without compromising safety. And then just see how your body responds. And as you're able to do that over a period of time, you'll be able to generate more intensity, and then you'll have to dial the volume back in general. So don't get too legalistic and feeling locked in that you're only going to do one set of leg presses or one set of one exercise. I think one set is enough if you can generate enough intensity, but like I said, if you feel like you just couldn't get enough out of that set, do a second set, do a third set.
I completely agree. Yeah. So with all this said, guys, what we're basically saying is, I have a really, really messed up spine, as I always talk about, but it gives you guys a point of view, some context to what Jerome's saying. My right hip is also really, really messed up. It really hurts sometimes to walk and move. Saying that, I can do some workouts quite safely for legs if I do pre-exhaust movements. If I find ways to make the compound, the heavy, the hip intensive movements have less weight, basically. So pre-exhaust if you can. The leg press as well is a very good example of that, like Jerome said. So you can do one set, and say, for example, you find out that you can get to concentric failure with 100 kilos. Okay, so you know that's like your hard spot where you don't really want to go beyond that if you've got like bad hips or thighs, whatever it is, bad knees. Then you might say, okay, well, I'm not going to do 100 kilos, but I'm going to do 90 or 95. 95 probably a good amount. We might say, okay, rather than do the 10 repetitions of 100 kilos, I might do 9 repetitions. But then you're still aiming to increase that amount, but with the relative difficulty or the rate of exertion isn't 100%, so you're not getting that complete 10 reps out, in which case you can add in a second set, a third set. So a lot of these, you guys have all seen the studies where there's like, one set gave you 60% gains, 2 sets 80%, 3 sets maybe 90%, or whatever it happens to be, somewhere around that ballpark figure. If you take that first set to total failure, where the weight squashes you, that is 100% intensity. That is 100% muscle growth you can get for one set. But there's a safety element that you don't have in that set. So you might just do concentric muscular failure. So you can essentially get maybe 90% of the gains with one set, theoretically. But then most people, as we know, do not train that hard. So they might only get 60%, in which case they'll have to, by default, add in a second or a third set to get the rest of the muscle gains that they might be able to accrue from the total workout itself.
Mm-hmm. Yep, well said.
Great Carnivore for sure. All financial inputs are helpful. Yes, I strongly agree with that statement. I stand behind that. How does the Body by Science cadence fit into your approach, Jonathan? Good question. So I've never read the book, but I found out the same or very similar approaches actually match what I found to be useful for myself. So funnily enough, after my experience, it seems to very closely match what's in the book. I think the only thing that it doesn't really match in terms of the outlined principles is the way that I prefer to train. So Jerome trains with slower concentrics than I do. It's not to say my concentrics are like half a second up. There may be 1, 2, sometimes 3 seconds, sometimes even 4, if the movement allows me to do it. So that's one thing that doesn't really fit to my approach, just because I prefer to lift slightly explosively. At the same time, it's under control. So when you see my videos and the Carnivore Crew Facebook group, you'll see there's a lot of control to all my movements. There's never a flinging of anything. Saying that I think the controlled eccentric portion, the negative, is also very effective. I am very conscious on safety, so that element of the Body by Science approach does fit into my workload. Trying to think what else. In terms of like maybe the tempo, maybe like the time and tension side of it as well, matches as well. Not because I follow a timer. I mean, if I was to add in, which Jerome actually explained very well to me, if you're to add in, say, a 5-second positive and 5-second negative, that's 10 seconds. You might be better off counting your time tension or your metric to improve upon by time tension. So you might arbitrarily do 6 repetitions, but it's more important that, with that load, with that specific exercise, technique, standardized, specific form, then you might find, okay, that 10-second round I'll be doing 7 times. But then if say you can get 7.3 reps, that's going to give you a different output. So it's a better measurement to use as your training intensity, as your performance metric. So until I get to a point where I get so messed up that I'm going to prefer to do very slow concentrics, I'm still going to count reps. But the way I do count reps at the moment is, for example, I'll give you guys an outline of a straight set for what I would perform and how I'd log it. So if I did, for example, 100 kilogram chest press, it's always 100 kilograms. So let's say chest press 1 times, as in 1 set times, then I'll just put the reps in it. So say I lift at 8 reps, like I get half a rep, I'll do 8.5. Then I'll put the weight next to it. So chest press 1 times 8.5, 100 kilos. 8.5 to me signifies that I've done half a rep, so I failed at the concentric portion. That's essentially it. I could, if I want to be more detailed, put 8.25, but I feel like there's that point in the strength curve when if you can do 8.25, you could probably do 8.5. There's always a bit more. If you did 8.5 easily, you could do 8.75. So do you understand what I'm saying? So it's that's my measurement. That's the way I track it. It seems to be effective. At the same time, I'm using two different gyms at the moment, so me being exact with my workouts from one to the next is impossible because the equipment is different. Saying that, I work around injuries, soreness, little niggling pains, so I'm finding different exercises more useful sometimes. So, for example, today I did you might call it a dumbbell Y press, so like a shoulder raise, lying prone on a bench. That's not something I'd usually do. I'd usually use cables, but my back was sore. I was essentially doing two side raise style exercises to make up for the fact I could not do a shoulder press. I was trying to generate more volume to make up for the lack of intensity that I couldn't perform through my usual intense shoulder press. But that's the way I'd choose to do things if I had my way and I was not sore. So I hope that gives you a bit of an outline of what I've been doing in terms of my training at the moment. And of course, if you want to see my workouts and be privy to the exclusive content, please join my Carnivore Crew Facebook group. It's currently £10 per month. Victoria is a delightful member we have there, as well as quite a few other people. Kyle now has joined. Jerome is a member. Sophie. Probably more people in the chat right now. Heaps more people. And it's a good way for questions answered, I think. We've got a super chat, it looks like. So Christopher Ellis has kindly donated me 10 Rona coins.
Excellent.
I don't know what it is. I'm gonna have to find out what an RON is now.
But that's very kind. Jonathan, you mind if I comment on the last, I guess, question that you had?
Do it.
Sure. So what I was going to say is, it's funny. It's been a few months since I've read Body by Science, but I've read it a few times, and McGuff is pretty quick to point out that a lot of things in that book are starting points, and he's trying to be more precise with principles than some of the actual applications that he recommends. I think in the book he recommends generally 10 seconds in each direction, but the Body by Science camp is very quick to point out that depending on the range of movement of the exercise that you're performing, 10 seconds might not even necessarily be conceivable. Some people just don't have the motor control with whatever weight they're using to do something with a very limited range of movement over the course of 10 seconds. Drew Bay once interestingly pointed out that if your turnarounds are really, really slow, so at the bottom of the range of movement and at the top of the range of movement, as long as you're having slow and controlled turnarounds to protect your joints in those positions of the range of movement, the absolute speed throughout the rest of the range of movement probably isn't even really that important, as long as you're keeping some degree of tension on the muscle. I'm a big believer, as are a lot of people in the Body by Science camp, that a 2-second cadence is probably every bit as effective as a 7, 8, 9, or 10-second cadence. What really matters is keeping tension on the muscles that you're trying to work and moving in a biomechanical pathway that keeps safety as top priority. So, and Jonathan and I have talked about this before. We talked about it on a previous Carnivore Ramblings. If I lifted more explosively, and Jonathan seems like most of his concentrics are generally around 2 to 3 seconds, sometimes a little faster, sometimes a little longer. If I lifted more explosively, I would count repetitions instead of time under load, because it's just easier to track my numbers if you're lifting a little bit faster. So it's like Jonathan said earlier, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. I've read Body by Science a few times, but I don't follow Body by Science protocol either, because I don't do the big 5. I like a push-pull legs split, but I'm adhering to the principles outlined in that book of basically perfect form, control the weights, use a reasonable concentric and eccentric, keeping the tension on the muscles that you're trying to use, and then make sure to emphasize rest and recovery.
Yeah, very well. I think anytime someone says they're doing I'd say quite. It sounds like a simple one, but broadly 1 second explosive concentric rep. That might signify to me that the weight they're lifting is too light. So perhaps that the weight they're using is too light and they're going to do 20, 30, 40 repetitions. That can be a problem in itself, because if, for example, you're doing a 1 second concentric and you're aiming for 20 seconds, that could be like a 40-second set, assuming it's 1 second up, 1 second down. What is 1 second going to turn into if you're doing an endurance exercise? It's always going to be about 1 second. So I think I think it's very hard to get that much intensity when you're training in that kind of way. I mean, you should always be pushing as hard as you can, but the weight should be significant enough that you're not like pressing the weight through the ceiling,
Yeah. And that's a good point.
Anyway, yeah. We've got. I just noticed it's Romanian lei or li. So apologies if I can't say that properly. It works out about $2, I think. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Can have another look at the questions. We might wrap this up soon, guys, because Jerome needs a wee.
You had to get that in, didn't you?
Got a few minutes left.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
I'm almost 1 week from lifting. My body still feels like it needs time. My CNS took a big hit from going to muscular therapy. I felt this before, drained. It sucks. Yep. That's what happens when you do too much.
Yeah.
I'd say I've been there before, but I've never put myself in that situation. But I've seen it to a lot of people. So yes, take time off, get back to it, scale back the volume. If you're doing, say you're doing 50 sets over a week or whatever you happen to be doing, do 40 next time. Measure, track, check progress. Yep. Still feeling like crap, 30. 20. I think beyond that point, if you've reduced it by so much, then I'd look at your recovery more so than your training volume and frequency. I think could be something else, or you're not eating enough, maybe.
Yeah.
But keep us updated in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
He's been training for 15 years. Just started pushing weights until I can't any longer. Be almost in tears. Huge shock to nervous system. For rest week or more after only 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah, this goes back to our talk about deload weeks, doesn't it, really? If you remember that one, Jerome.
Yeah. Yeah, you could certainly program them in, but you'll know when you're overtrained. And it's kind of a spectrum. Like overtraining in a really slight scale can just be not making progress for a couple of weeks in a row. But yeah, if you suddenly start pushing it harder than you ever have before and you're keeping the volume relatively high, you'll know if you're overtrained.
Yeah, completely agree. You shouldn't get yourself into that position, really. As much as that sounds like Captain Hindsight, I told you so. It's there's warnings that you'd get prior to that. Like, for example, my shoulder ached. It's ached for about a week now. I've not been able to do 2 push workouts properly. That tells me, okay, I really need to rest at this time. I can still do some exercise of shoulders, but not the ones I want to do. So that's my own indicator. Now, if I persisted and carried on and said, I'm just going to keep trying it and trying it and trying it, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster and injury. Something will happen. I'll tear something. You will know very quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you for your answers, Jonathan. Victoria says, I've been using your slightly explosive approach. Great report advice. Appreciate it very much. Differences in equipment is a problem. Yeah, thank you for your question. It's a very good one. Yes, hopefully it is helpful, but you can see here there's Jerome's way of doing it and there's my way of doing it. Ultimately, we have the same outline of what we find effective. It's just he's doing something different and measuring it differently to the way I'm doing it. Like I kind of said, if I was messed up from doing the slightly faster or slightly more explosive approach, then yes, I'd have to change it. I'm not dogmatic in saying my way is the best way and that I couldn't enjoy the way that Jerome lifts. It's just a mindset change that I'd have to adopt, which can be quite challenging to someone that's trained for a certain way for such a long period of time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I just realized I just hit go live on Facebook at the top. Next to end broadcast and the thingy. Yeah.
Okay, I see that. Oh no. Okay. I apologize.
I have to go for about 20 minutes longer.
Yeah, as I say, I should have picked up on that.
I didn't see it. It's so small in the corner. And guys, remember, I'm very far from the camera, so I can't even see the screen. That's why sometimes I get Jerome to read that question.
Oh, yeah.
I've got
that's my bad. I'm right up
well.
to the screen. I'm right up to the screen, so I apologize. I can always read these for you too.
No, my reading's fine. It's just as the fatigue sets in and you go for a bit longer, towards like the 40-minute mark, I can read, but it's more the fact I've got lights on me. I might just show you guys how bright these lights go, just for fun.
He's changing the mood lighting in the red room.
So this is intensity. Now this is white light. This is the kind of light that keeps you up at night. It's not nice, is it? But these are handy little remotes, actually. I recommend people get these if they're looking to increase their red light exposure at certain times of the day. Very good. Excellent. These panels actually were quite... I say they're reasonable. They're reasonable for a studio setup where I'm trying to do something with my YouTube channel. But I think some people invested in these, stuck them to their, I don't know, the table next to their bed or something, and say they're sat there reading a book at night. Yeah, they're quite a good idea, I think. I recommend them. Just dashing to show some black hearts. Have a great Q&A, lads. Yeah, cheers for that.
Thank you.
What does black hearts mean? Am I daft?
I don't think it necessarily means anything special. I think, red is normally more romantic. Yellow, I think, is more friendship oriented, and black is just because it's Alicia and she doesn't have a soul.
She doesn't have any soul. She has no personality either.
No, none.
She's dead as a board.
Got a badass action figure collection though.
She does. Yeah, Sophie and I might go to the Surrey Comic-Con thing in June. I was very excited because they have Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Yeah.
Which I really like. I'll have to show you sometime. I've got a collection of thousands of them in boxes.
Do you? Excellent.
Like loads.
I'm a little bit older. I got big into Magic the Gathering in the 90s, right when it came out. And that kind of influenced Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and a whole other litany of games.
Yeah, Black Hearts matter. I agree. We're all inclusive in this channel. I'm actually quite surprised. Very little politically stanced questions have come up, which is probably quite a good thing because they know that I'm probably not going to engage in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Carnivore Muscle Ramblings, not Carnivore Political Ramblings. I don't think anyone wants to hear my opinion.
Maybe that's the maybe that's the next segment of Q&As we'll do. That's the next YouTube channel.
I might dip on that one. I think it's best in some ways if I just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, my stance on all these things on YouTube and what I'll say and not say on this thing is I think that we all have our opinions. They can all be right or wrong to different degrees. Mm-hmm. And I don't like to focus on things that I can't help or change.
Yep.
But I know I can change people's mindset towards training and diet because I have done that. However, I don't think I've ever had an argument with someone because they have a different standpoint in terms of politics to me and benefited from it. I've never left that situation feeling better. So that's a complete contradiction towards my goals for the channel, my goals for myself. I don't want to engage in that sort of thing, but it's not to say that I'm completely neutral on every topic, but I don't want to go into things and wrap my head around different topics and ideas. I mean, I've had conversations with our friend James McDonald about religious stuff, stuff with you about religion as well. it's a viewpoint at the end of the day. It's always good to expand your mind and hear different things. We don't have all the answers. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd probably be God, wouldn't we, Jerome?
Yeah, and how boring life would be if we knew everything and if we had all the answers.
Very good. Carnivore Muscle Ramblings, Politics Edition, cutscene.
Happening never.
Yeah, 10 seconds is a long time. Tension's key. Yeah, I talked about this before because I thought, okay, if you're going to do 10 seconds time tension, say positive and negative, all right, you're not really moving the weight, but then at the same time, would the load transmit to your joints more over that time? So it seems like you're getting more joint action rather than muscular activation. At least that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, if you're doing 10 seconds time attention, say you're doing 10 seconds up, 10 seconds down, say you're doing 6 reps, that's 20 seconds per rep, 120 reps per second, sorry. That seems like a long time to be in different points of the movement, like in terms of like the stretch position and the straightened arm position. Yep. I feel like you shouldn't spend too much time in the less difficult position. Like you should spend more time in chest press, for example, in this sort of position. I think that bit is, you shouldn't rush in that position, but at the same time, you shouldn't be like 6, 7, 8, 9, just to get like 1 inch of movement. I don't think that's a good way to activate muscle fibers in a lot of cases, because the machine, the way it's loaded, the strength curve, the resistance profile, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think some of that's going to depend on, you're right, the equipment that you're using. If you have a properly cammed machine, I think it's less of a deal. But I still kind of lean in the direction that, like, whether it's 2 or 3 seconds up, 2 or 3 seconds down, or 10 each way, your actual time under load of that particular set is probably going to be about the same either way. So you're spending more time kind of in a certain position at once, but if you do more repetitions, but you still hit the same time under load, it's going to be the equivocal amount of time in those same positions. So I don't know. I think the bigger emphasis is, are you controlling the weight? Are you having slow controlled changes of direction? And are you training with intensity? And if you're doing that, I don't think the actual repetition cadence is too terribly important.
I think so, yeah. We'll have to cover that in a video, I think, at some point.
But I'll definitely.
Right. We've got one more.
See, now you kind of sparked some thoughts. So I'm going to reflect on what you said, Jonathan, and I'm sure we'll talk offline. But I definitely want to let that marinate for a while.
Yeah, bear in mind my caveat to all that sort of talk was specific movements where the lockout portion of the rep is under very little or no load.
Yeah. And at least a lot of modern HIIT will emphasize only using an effective range of movement. Now, whether or not people that are actually exercising that style will do that is a whole other thing. But for the most part, depending on the movement, you might only be using, half of what's normally considered the range of movement. But I'm excited. I have something to deeply ponder and think about this afternoon. So thank you.
So we'll either finally have something to disagree on, or another thing we do agree on. So.
Yeah, either way,
it might be that. It might be that you find a way where you agree and disagree in certain circumstances. Who knows? So,
yeah. So I
forget I'm live on Facebook.
I forget the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of, when two men disagree, like, both can't be right, but both people will profit from that exchange. So in being able to discuss things and come closer to the truth, we're both going to gain from disagreement. So I'm excited to give that some thought.
Yeah. It looks like our back nearly match exactly, apart from the colours. And your giant bobblehead, and I just look like a pale red guy.
Yeah. Yeah, this camera is really zoomed in compared to my other one, but that's the default. Oh well.
Yeah, I might look at getting my camera like better at some point. the thing is, for me, it's mainly the lighting, guys. So with the setup I have, I don't want white lights in my face at this time of day. At the same time, I live in when I'm filming these at 7 p.m. roughly UK time, and assuming I'm at my house in my studio, then the window is in front of me. So that time of day at this critical period will be from light outside to dark. So it means I kind of have to shut my curtains and find a way to keep the light consistent. So that's why I turned a light on just a minute ago, because I had the curtain open. So it's tricky. Lighting is tough, and I couldn't be in Jerome's situation right now with a studio lighting very bright this time of night. It would really wreck my sleep. So that's why I'm in a red submarine that my friend Matthew mentioned.
Well, I have to be somewhat cautious too, because my front door is right across from, like, a little bit higher than the computer desk. So I look down a little bit more, because sometimes the mix of artificial light plus natural sunlight coming in can be a migraine trigger for me. So if I ever look like I'm looking down instead of at the camera, I'm looking at you when you're talking, and that keeps a lot of that natural sunlight from mixing and messing with my vision.
Oh, I see. Yeah. All right. We've got one last question, I think. I've just went over it. Okay. This is the last one tonight, guys. If you ask any more, they'll be ignored. Then perhaps answered next time. If they are going to be asked next time, please put a good one up that I can bite my teeth into. So the question is, rumination on ruminant animal meat for muscle buildings versus non-ruminant, for instance, fish. So what do we think about eating ruminant meat versus non-ruminant meat? I think the mainstay of our diet that we've seen and in the carnivore diet is beef. Then, of course, if you live in areas where beef is less prominent, perhaps you live in a culture where they don't eat beef. You know, some countries they don't eat any beef at all. Some countries they don't eat any pork. Some countries they might not eat lamb because it's not available. So there'll be a cultural, geographical difference, I think. Saying that, like, my diet is a mixed carnivore diet. Beef, eggs, raw dairy, fish, oily fish especially. That's about it, I think. But yeah, I'd say that in terms of the nutrient density amount, energy amount of my diet, I'd say the most amount is from meat. I eat a heap of butter as well, so it's basically beef and butter is most of my diet. Then I top up with the eggs, then I top up with the whey protein, which kind of counts as dairy, cheese as well, and the oily fish. So yeah, I might do another eat what I eat in a day video at some point. But what do you think, Jerome? I mean, is there a benefit to eating different meat sources, animal foods?
Maybe. I don't think it would be significant, though. I maybe looking at it from the other direction. I think if too much of your diet is beef or pork or fish, you'll kind of know, and then you'll kind of end up course correcting back in the direction that you need to go, and your appetite and your cravings and other subjective measures will kind of tell you what may be best for your body, and that there may be some cultural and kind of heritage aspect to that. So like the 2 times I've been on vacation in Hawaii, like there wasn't a lot of beef out in Hawaii, but there was tons of pig, and I eat a lot of pork. I tend to now just eat mostly beef because it's relatively cheap, and I'll eat a lot of bacon. And if I can find salmon or fish that's less expensive, I'll pick it up. I love fish. I just don't want to pay twice as much per pound as it costs for beef out here. Long-term, like, body composition goals, I don't think it makes a significant difference, but in terms of just subjective well-being and how you feel on a day-to-day basis, I think as you do this long enough, you'll kind of figure out what makes you feel best, and that's a little bit different for everybody. Even some long-term carnivores, some people do really, really well on beef, but they can't tolerate lamb. Michaela Peterson, I know she prefers grain-finished beef compared to 100% grass-fed beef. And I know that's a little bit unconventional in the carnivore space. So if you do it long enough and you listen to your body, it'll kind of steer you where you need to go. But most people, I tend to think, follow your cravings. And, if you want beef or fish or, God forbid, even chicken on occasion, go for it. And your body will tell you what's up.
Yeah, completely agree. An example of that for me is when I was eating about 10 eggs a day, like 10 big eggs a day around Christmas time. Maybe 2 months after that, so say March time maybe, I started eating less, maybe 6 eggs. Now I'm eating about 3 or 4 a day. I think that you have almost like nutrient sensors in your body which determine how much you do or don't have on board. That when you've kind of hit that limit, your body says, this isn't as appetizing to me anymore.
Yep.
You know, I know a lot of people, like some people are, oh, I can't eat eggs. Yeah, you might have a gene which means that the sulfur within it is too much for you. It causes some gastric distress. So your body would give you the signal to stop eating it. The same thing's true with eating very fatty beef. If for example you eat ground beef, very fatty, like Jerome does, like 73-27, then yes, perhaps you might have an issue with rendered fat. It might not be that the beef itself is bad or the fat itself is bad. It's just when you're cooking the fat itself so much and it becomes a liquid when it's cooked, that could be the problem itself. So it could even be how you're cooking foods as well that makes a difference. So
Yeah.
it's a lot to think about. But yeah, like I said, I like a mixed diet and it seems to work well for me. My diet does change, and that's why it's very hard and tricky sometimes to say that you follow a diet which is all beef or all beef and eggs or beef, butter, bacon and eggs and that sort of thing. By the way, guys, I don't eat pork. I don't eat bacon. I don't eat sausages. So just so you know, guys. But yeah,
Oh man,
it's hard for me to outline, you know?
I eat a lot of sausage, and that might just be a Wisconsin thing with all the German influence over here. But yeah, I eat a lot of sausage.
Yeah. That'll be the description or the title for this video. Jerome Armstrong, I eat a lot of sausage.
Go for it. You know, the
I'm getting that
algorithm will
clip.
tell you if that was a good video title or not.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to go whiz through the last messages. Not answering any more questions tonight, guys. Jerome needs a wee, just so you guys know. Thank you, Zbigniew, for the 50 British pounds that you sent me. I greatly appreciate that. I've mentioned it earlier in the stream, but you may have checked out. But yes, thank you for that. I appreciate it very much. It's tremendous towards me affording a new laptop, which will make me able to render and create better content. I'm in the experimental phase at the moment, so I've conducted 2 videos that are interviews, 1 informative video and 1, let me think, reaction video. So I'm making use of what I have, what I got at the moment. I'm noticing some pitfalls to the software, or at least the hardware quality that I currently have. So I'm testing things out, and yes, it is indicated that I need a laptop to perform the tasks that I need to in order to expand my YouTube channel and therefore improve the content, the quality of content, and have a further reach. So yes, very much appreciated again. What's happening?
Hey, Mark.
Not a lot really, just answering some questions on Carnivore Muscle Rumblings. Talking about sausage and politics and
Right?
stuff like that. Black Hearts Matter. I've got that one already, haven't I? Yeah. MTG, Magic the Gathering, I'm guessing.
Yep. Well,
I never
still
played that
have
one.
some of my
I
old
just
cards.
yeah. Oh Christ! I got Sophie to download Yu-Gi-Oh, by the way, and we played it for a good few months.
Nice.
Then I got a life and started my YouTube channel. I honestly can't, for life of you guys, I can't imagine myself right now sitting there playing games. There's some games I play on my phone in the morning, like a FIFA game, which take about 10 minutes to use up all your, I don't know, perks, whatever it is. But outside of that, yeah, I don't play games anymore. I don't have time. Too tired, too old. This is why I love Rick, and why I love the fact he comes to my channel. He brings about really good points. Politics is show business for ugly people. Think about it. That's a lot to reminisce on.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my political mouth shut.
Yeah, I don't like things. As long as I can go to the gym, feed myself, provide, be independent, and do the best I can to improve from day one to the day two, then I'm very much happy. Very much happy. And of course, the health span and the longevity of my family and loved ones is, of course, of utmost importance to me as well. Training and diet are the only things we can fully control, and they're both very important. Yeah, we can do a lot of those things. You know the expression, the iron never lies, or something. Cheers, Christopher.
Maybe.
Appreciate that.
You start buying barbell plates for an exercise studio like I have. You find that not every 45-pound plate is actually 45 pounds. You got to buy from reputable dealers.
Yeah,
you'd be surprised how some of them will vary.
To be fair, yeah, I've had anyone that's like an expert with like training. Anyone's like been to the gym for like over a decade, I'd say. They know what different weights feel like. Like the hex dumbbells for me felt quite light, but then the rounded ones always feel heavier. I don't know why that is. Same thing's true with weights. Like the weight discs. Sometimes if they've got a thicker rim around them, they might feel heavier than the thinner rim one, even though the weight still says 20 kilos. So yeah, I don't know. I've always wanted to check, but.
I wonder if the shape affects the center of gravity as the weight's moving through a range of movement. And because that's multiplied by the length of the lever arm, it just feels different.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just rambling out loud. So
I'm just looking at the options I can post on. I can also post on Facebook groups.
Nice. I was going to say I hear you clicking, but I didn't see any of the comments changing, so I wasn't sure if we were having lag or some tech issue.
Yeah. We can discuss Miss Peterson, the Political Ramblings channel. She hates me. She blocked me from our group because I said something about her diet.
You'll have to unpack that sometime.
I don't know if I want to.
Privately, you and me, we can chat it out.
Yeah, I'll let. It's not like really gossipy. It's just like, oh, that was annoying. Next, one of those sort of things. Anyway, yeah, Jenny, this is a fancy Facebook Live muscle heart face because of people like yourself who have been kind enough to help add in additional funds to my channel, donating as well, which you have done, subscribing, giving your thoughts, sharing my stuff, liking it, commenting on it, joining my Patreon, all those sort of things. It all does help, so I do appreciate that. And I'm looking back now thinking the quality of my content now, like the videos I make, alongside also with Jerome, versus the content I was making 6 months ago, and day difference, and people like yourself have been a real positive impact on that. So I'm very much grateful for that, and it's nice to have the opportunity to do more with the time you have. It's not nice to be in a position where you don't have enough money to like afford a laptop, to be able to afford different software and all that sort of thing. But I've had I'm very grateful for it, and it does help me help you guys. So thank you for that. Thanks. Cheers, Vignev. Great one again, guys. Thanks for your thoughts. Yes, we covered some really good topics today. Look out for them as clips in a few weeks to come.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Jonathan has videos premiering, I think, every day on his channel. At least they're ones that are scheduled for at least the next couple of weeks, I believe. So lots of great daily content coming out.
I've got months of videos. And I could premiere them all pretty much right now. I could just do like I think Lambs alluded to at one point. He's saying like you could have like an explosion of like videos, like one after the other. Then like you could have like a few like little ones, like that, like go back to back sort of thing. Then do like another big one. Then an interview. Then you could do so. I don't know. I'm crazy. Yeah. Honestly, guys, I do have some really good videos coming out. I've made quite a few this week, which you'll be pleased to see. But you'll notice that the thumbnail's title changed a little bit, but the message does remain the same. So don't be off put if it seems a bit off for you. But I'm trying to grow my channel, trying to grow my business, trying to spread the message, and it's all for my own benefit as well as your own. So please bear this in mind and continue to support my channel, like my videos, comment, share them as much as you can. If you found something useful, share it to a friend. Hopefully it will help them out as well. It's nice to see when people do find these useful. So I do appreciate it if you can do any of those things. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a video about Hiromi, it seems.
A couple of Halloweens ago.
Oh, Jerome.
It was yeah, it's it just reminded me. I dressed up as Edgar Allan Poe for Halloween, so a lot of people thought I was just cross-dressing. So when he said Jerome, it reminded me of that. But when you're a long-term bodybuilder, you have great legs, and you can pull off a skirt that a lot of people can't.
Agreed. Yeah. Guys, watch that video that's airing tomorrow. It's an interview of myself and Jerome. It's very personal, in-depth, real. There's nothing sensationalistic about it or razzmatazz. It's just a personal account of someone that's had different experiences throughout the last few years. How the diet itself has changed them, how their mindset's changed, and how it's kind of made Jerome who he is today, which is quite fascinating. He's someone I very much admire, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have learnt a lot from him over the years, years and months, at least in that period of time. But hopefully there's many, many, many more months to come.
Thank you for the kind words. You also did an amazing job on the thumbnail, and that was one of the more fun conversations I've ever had online. So 40 minutes flew by.
Good. Right. Likes aren't matching the amount of people on here. Let's fix this, folks. Yes, at one point we had 20 people live on this, which is distressing. Yeah, I appreciate that, Rick. It does help. To be fair, I don't leave comments on every video I watch. I watch most of Bart's videos, but I don't leave a comment on every single one. But I always hit like. It does help. So thank you for that. Quote the Raven, he said, or she said, or they said.
Well, I suppose if I was Edgar Allan Poe, to quote the Raven, I would have to say never whore.
Oh my god! Oh, my
I'll try and find those.
Upset now.
I'll try and find those pictures, Jonathan.
Yeah, do it. I want to see.
No, you don't.
All right, this is the end of Carnivore Muscle Ramblings live Q&A number 32. It's been an extended edition today, so thank you for joining. This is the last live Q&A on Fridays. So it's the Monday that you've got to look out for. So in a couple of days' time, we'll see you all again. Thank you again for joining. We'll see you then.